Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Steph, and if you're new here, I'm Steph. So today we will be going over my 4 and 5 star reads of January. I've kind of switched to this method of rather than doing a complete wrap up of everything that I've read in a month, I'm just giving you the highlights. So January was a really interesting month because in December I started exploring a little bit more of romance, and in January I went full force into it. So I have a few romances to talk about. I am going to be making a dedicated video to my experience as a romance newbie, talking about what I've learned in my experience of reading romance, like the tropes that I love, the themes that I love, the types of characters in romance that I've really been gravitating towards. But I think you'll kind of see that in this wrap up. So let's just start there. I may have gotten a little obsessed with Mariana Zapata this January, and so I read 4 Mariana Zapatas, but only 3 of them are actually making it to this 4 and 5 star reads. I started my Mariana Zapata obsession with All Roads Lead Here. I think I gave it a 4.5, but I think it's more of a 5-star read for me because I do think about this one quite a lot. And in this romance, you're following Aurora. She is kind of running away from a really toxic relationship where her kind of husband was in the music industry. He made it pretty big in the music industry, but she has kind of written most of his songs for him. And so she's running away from that relationship because she realizes it's really toxic and she's doing the majority of the work for this man who is talentless. You know what I'm saying? So in order to escape the situation, Aurora ends up going back to this small town in Colorado that her mother raised her, but there's kind of this unknown factor of what happened to her mom. Basically, her mom went on this hike and never returned, and there's never really been any answers as to what happened to her mother on this hike. And Aurora is at this place in her life where she wants to connect with her mother again, and she wants to go back to her roots, as it were. And so she ends up living in this small town, but it starts off very rocky because the person she's renting a room from actually wasn't supposed to rent this room to her. It happens to be Rhodes's son. Rhodes is the love interest in this book, and his son basically was like, hey, we need to make a little extra money, so we're gonna rent this room, without really asking his dad if that was okay. They've come to an agreement, so she is staying there, but it's tentatively, and she's supposed to be looking for something else, right? Wrong, because they fall in love. The thing I loved about this was there's a lot of introspection on Aurora's part about her life, about her independence, about becoming your own person again after this really toxic and failed relationship. But on top of that, like going through this grieving process and trying to understand how this grief fits in her life. And I just love those moments of reflection. I love the moments where she's going on hikes and she's like,
shit, I really messed up. I'm probably gonna die on this hike because I was not prepared to do this.
I just really love those moments because it's so real. Like, you think you're capable of more, but I think those were kind of metaphors also for the fact that she wasn't really ready to face certain things, but she was kind of forced into facing those things and grieving for those moments in her life. So the thing that you need to know about Mariana Zapata is she does slow burn and she does lengthy novels. So I think All Roads Lead Here is like 600 pages. If not, it's like 500 and something-ish pages. And that's kind of just Mariana Zapata's thing, is long, slow burn books. And that just seems to really work for me. I love the slow burn. I love the pining. And I just really love the fact that it feels like these characters, especially in All Roads Lead Here, but in every Mariana Zapata book that I've read so far, they feel like they're friends. It feels so organic at times how they come together and how they create these friendships. But I also love that there's a lot of introspection that happens here, and I really love that the characters are going through their own things and they're trying to work through them. And it's not that the relationship or them coming together is saving or fixing the things in their lives that are troubling them, but it's more that like they're just supporting one another. So I just really like the way the character dynamics happen. I will say I've seen a trend with Mariana Zapata where there's age gaps. Also, if you like a sexy scene, there's really only one, and it happens like that's the climax, metaphorically and literally, of the book. And obviously it's long as fuck. They're so long. So it absolutely worked for me, which led me into reading a couple other of her books. And the other one that ended up being 4 stars was Kulti. Kulti is a bit different because it is a sports romance. So in Kulti, you follow Sal, who is a soccer player. She plays for a semi-professional women's soccer league, and she has hero worshipped this man named Kulti, who is a famous soccer player, now retired, and he is now going to be the coach of her semi-professional soccer team. And it's pretty funny because I didn't think that I would really enjoy someone who had hero worshipped someone and had like a crush on them from childhood and then actually dates them in real life. I thought there would be a weird power dynamic there, and I didn't exactly feel that in here. I didn't feel as weird about this one. I realized that I really do like the sports element in here. I played a lot of sports growing up and in high school, and so it's really fun to read about a character playing sports. And I also love the chronic pain rep in here a lot. I really loved the way that they ended up entering into this friendship because Sal and Colty end up playing soccer together on the side just to play because he didn't have anyone else to play with. And it was really nice how their relationship formed in that way. And that's why I think I didn't feel so weird about the hero worship part of it. I also really thought the banter was really funny, and I thought there was realistic consequences to the idea that a player was dating the coach. There was a lot of realistic consequences in how the team reacted versus how media reacted. I think the one thing that you need to know about this is Mariana Zapata also gets caught up on one thing in every book, and in this one, it was poop. Yes, I said poop. For whatever reason, because Sal thinks that Colty is so hot, she tries to remind herself that he is just a human, so she continuously says, like, he poops, he goes to the bathroom, blah, 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 to make herself see him as human and less hot. I don't know. I don't think that worked for her, obviously, but that is a thing. So, and then the last Mariana Zapata that ended up getting another 4.5 from me was from Lukov with Love, which is an ice skating one. I loved this. I actually do have a vlog where I read this if you wanted better thoughts than probably what I'm going to give here. But this one follows Jasmine. Jasmine is a figure skater and she is basically at the tail end of her career. She also has some chronic pain and injuries that are kind of pushing her more towards retiring, but more importantly, it's because she hasn't really won any competitions, and her partner who she skated with for quite a few years ended up leaving her to join a different partner. And so she's kind of like, maybe this is my time to be done with ice skating. And one day, Ivan Lukov, who she's had a rivalry with from childhood, like she is best friends with his little sister. They've kind of been in competition with one another, but he has won a lot more competitions and gold, unlike Jasmine. And so they've had this really intense rivalry, and like the way that they talk to each other is hilarious. Anyway, Ivan needs a new skating partner because his partner also left him to skate with somebody else, and they enter into an agreement that Jasmine will skate with him for a year, and after that year is up, they have to find her another partner. So they enter into this agreement, but obviously they are not moving on because they fall in love. And I will say, this almost knocked All Roads Lead Here out of my #1 Mariana Zapata ranking spot because the banter in here was so much better than any of the other books I've read from her so far. Like, their dynamic was super believable from the very beginning and just continued to get more believable. And I really, really love Ivan as a love interest. I'm pretty sure if I just didn't love a grumpy mountain man as much as I do, Ivan would have knocked Rhodes out of the #1 spot. Although Rhodes could be really cringy at times. Like, his nicknames, he needs to let that go. But Ivan, I just really loved him as a character, and I really loved Jasmine, and just them together, the banter was hilarious. And like, their dynamic just felt so organic the entire time. But on top of that, like the struggles, again, which is very common, that Jasmine was going through with her family, but specifically her dad, it was really nice to see again that she's going through this introspection about this relationship with her dad and her relationship with figure skating and like what that's gonna look like as she's getting older, and the fact that things don't seem to be going well for her career. She's really reflecting on these things and really trying to take the right steps to be able to do the things she loves, but also to be, you know, financially stable and okay. But what I love the most, like I said before, is that these characters are not a fix for the problems in their lives, and that even whenever that confrontation comes to a head, it's not resolved magically. There is still like lingering issues within that, but it's people working towards being better. And that happened in here. I think there was a really great moment with her dad where it definitely plays out like that, and I just really appreciated that. Again, slow burn, you know, the spicy scenes at the end, and then there's like the happily ever after. So right now, those are my favorite Mariana Zapata books that I've read. Unfortunately though, I only have 2 more books on this list that made it into my 4 and 5-star reads. I didn't have the best start to the year. So the next 4-star read for me is A River Enchanted by Rebecca Ross, and I read this for my Patreon book club pick, and I really enjoyed it. If you're ever interested in joining my Patreon, I actually have a spoilery vlog where I talk about all my feelings about this book. The funny thing is though, we did end up having a live show about A River Enchanted, and I realized that while I gave it 4 stars upon finishing it, I don't remember much about this book, which is wild to say because I probably finished it mid-January, but it did not stick with me in terms of the plot. So I don't know if it can be a 4 stars, but that's where we're at right now. So I'm gonna try to give you the best synopsis that I can, but I can't promise too much. Essentially, there are 4 characters' perspectives that you're sort of following. So one of the central characters is Jack, and Jack has left his home island because he is a bastard and he feels like everyone has ostracized him his whole life. So he left the island to go to the mainland and learn music and become a professor. Well, he gets summoned back to the island because another character named Adira has summoned him to help solve the mystery of these missing girls. So upon Jack returning, you find out that the spirits who live on this island have seemingly been taking young girls, and they don't know why. They have figured that something has upset the spirits, and Adira believes that it is because her mother has recently passed away, and her mother was the bard of the island, and that usually music calmed the spirits. Well, obviously, you know, Jack studied music, so they're kind of hoping that he will come and be the new bard on the island. But he has to do a few tasks with Adira to summon the spirits and talk to them about why these girls are going missing. And then you have a married couple named Sidra and Torrent, and you find out very early on that Sidra can see ghosts and that she's the healer on this island. And so she is also trying to solve the mystery of these missing girls because she has a little girl and she is afraid that she will go missing. So she is also trying to solve this mystery. Meanwhile, Torrent is at the forefront of these raids that keep happening by their rival clan, who are the Breckons. And the Breckons keep raiding them during the winter because they don't have much food during the winter. So they come to the other side of the island to steal the food. And Torrent is sort of on the forefront of that, trying to stop these raids. So there's a lot of threads happening in this book, but the central theme here is that these little girls are going missing and they're not really sure why. So what I liked about this book, I actually really enjoyed the characters. There's a lot of character dynamics here that became really interesting as you were reading through this book, but one of my favorite character dynamics is actually Sidra and Torrent, because in reality they didn't marry each other for love. They married each other because Torrent's first wife died and he needed somebody to help raise his daughter. And Sidra sort of entered into this relationship being like, yeah, I could love you, type of thing, and he's like, yeah, I could probably love you too. And it's very sweet to see how they do love each other and the way that that unfolds within this book, especially due to certain circumstances that take place in this book. Like the way that their love unfolds in here is just really special, and I loved their relationship because it was such a mature relationship. So I just really appreciated them and their relationship, and those are my 2 favorite characters of this story. Jack and Adira have such an interesting dynamic because they kind of hated each other when they were younger, and now they're in a situation where they're kind of getting to know each other a bit differently. So I really enjoyed the character dynamics. I will say that there is some confusion in here about the lore itself and like the spirits and how it came to be and how this island really came to be. Like you get some of those answers, but not definitive answers. There are some plot holes in here in regards to some of the characters' abilities. You don't get answers to it. Now this is a duology, so I'm holding out hope that in the second book you get some answers to a lot of the plot holes in the first book. I think what really sucks you into this book and keeps you tethered to it is the mystery aspect to it. I really love a good mystery in a fantasy book in general, so that's what tied me to this story so heavily, and I ended up really liking the characters, but I just feel that the lore in here wasn't as fleshed out as it could have been. But the thing making me want to move on to the next book is the ending of this book. It ends on a cliffhanger, and you probably could see the cliffhanger coming from a mile away, but I still was surprised by it, and I want to read the next one. I'm very curious about how this is all going to resolve. I have theories, but I'm not going to share them here because that'll be spoilery. But yeah, in the end I gave it 4 stars. I'm sure it's more like a 3.5 5 because of how little I remember it, but I think I'm gonna rate it based on how I feel about the duology as a whole. So yeah, in theory, this was a 4 stars because that's what I rated it right when I finished it. But doing the live show the other day, I was like, oh, I don't remember a lot. And then the last book that I gave 4 stars was Blood Sanctuary Part 1, which I've talked about this series quite a few times. This is the 3rd book in the Blood Grace series, the 1st book being Blood Mercy. And this is the one that is a fantasy romance where they have a vampire race called the Hesperenes, and the Hesperenes are like a different type of vampire than we've seen in most like urban fantasy. This is definitely more fantasy than urban fantasy. And this 3rd installment was not a disappointment, although it's not actually my favorite of the 3 books that I've read. I think it's just because you expect certain things in the way the plot should progress because it is a singular book, but since it's a part 1 of part 2, it doesn't progress in that way, and it feels a little stilted and maybe a little bit disappointing, but it still was great. I love being with these characters. I'm loving getting to know a lot of the newer characters in here, and the lore and the world building just continues to keep me impressed and interested, and the politics continue to become more high stakes, and we're only 3-ish books deep into this, so I can't even imagine, because I think it's 7 books total if I did my math right. I think that Vela Roth does an amazing job of balancing the world building, the politics, and the romance, and she does it so well that it feels like this really well-rounded, well fleshed out book. The only thing that also kind of has been getting to me is the way the conversations sometimes feel really stilted. And I'm not sure if it is just the writing in general, or if it's because this takes a more formal approach to writing because of the fact that it's more of a medieval setting. So she has kind of matched the writing style to that medieval setting. I think that maybe because of how formal the writing is, the conversations sometimes just don't feel organic. They feel really stilted and forced. I'm sure that as we get further and we're already knowing the world, we probably won't be getting these almost monologues or like really long conversations to get the lore of something, to get the world building of something, to like grasp a concept. I'm hoping that will like dissipate after the 3rd book. So that's my only issue, and I think that was another reason that this was 4 stars instead of 5 stars like the other 2. But I'm still very excited to finish this series. I'm just making my way through it kind of slowly. So yeah, those were the only 4 and 5 star reads that I had in the month of January. Let me know if you've read any of these. Let me know some of your 4 and 5 star reads of January, and if you feel so inclined, you can leave a vampire emoji down below if you've made it this far and have nothing to say, and I will talk to you next time. Bye!